This beginner guide for Fire Mage in patch 10.2.5 of Dragonflight is going to have absolutely no information overload, but I am going to teach you the specs so you can hit the ground running. And that is going to be for Raiding and Mythic Plus. It probably goes without saying that as a beginner, we are going to want to be using eye level and intellect above everything else. But I do just want to talk about some of the secondary stats we can use as a Fire Mage and why. So Fire Mage is incredibly focused around critical strike. So why then are we using haste as our top preferred secondary stat? Well, we actually are going to be guaranteed a lot of crits from a lot of our spells based off of our talent tree and things like that, meaning that crit, even though it's very important for the rotation, isn't actually something we're going to need as much of from our gear. Haste, however, is going to impact how quickly that global cooldown is coming off our abilities, and therefore how much abilities we can actually use in our cooldown windows and things like that. So the stat priority is going to go intellect, haste, versatility, critical strike, and then mastery. But like I said, as a beginner, focus mostly on just getting that eye level and intellect up. In regards to what talent trees to go with, on the left here is the Raid talent tree I recommend, and on the right is the one for Mythic Plus. I'm not going to go through every single talent as that could overload your brain as you're learning this spec. But what I do recommend is that once you're a lot more familiar with the rotation and you've practiced it a bit, is that you go back, look at all the talents and the spells in the spellbook and just see how they all fit together. And that's going to really help grounding your knowledge to become a bit more of an expert in Fire Mage. But I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, so you don't need to worry about that just yet. There is going to be an import string below in the description so that you can put these talent trees straight into your game. Now let's look at some of our really important cooldowns and utilities we have at our disposal as a Fire Mage. First up at the top here, we've got Ice Cold. This is going to do massive damage reduction for yourself. It's going to give you a debuff so that you can't have this effect again for 30 seconds. And it's also going to heal you for a massive amount as well. This is one of your best defensive abilities that we have. In the middle at the top here is Combustion. This is actually going to form the core part of our rotation as a Fire Mage. I'm not going to go too deep into this right now, but just know that it's there and we will be going deep into it. It's going to do huge combat increases like 100% crit chance and also giving you better mastery, etc. Then we've got Greater Invisibility. This will make you lose all threat and you actually won't be targetable at all. While this is actually active, you will take 60% less damage as well, but don't do anything or cast any abilities because that will instantly cancel this effect. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with Time Warp, but if you're not, this is actually the Bloodlust or Heroism buff that you can give yourself and your party, increasing haste by 30% for 30 seconds. However, there's a talent I'd like to show you. This one just here, Temporal Warp, actually means that once you've used Time Warp and you then have the debuff where you can't benefit from it again, you can actually use Time Warp again yourself and get 30% haste for 40 seconds. So just be aware that that is available. Basically, as a mage, you're actually going to get a double Time Warp. Last of all, we've got Mirror Image. Now, don't let the tooltip in-game fool you where it says that you can summon free mirror images to attack. This is actually a defensive ability and not offensive. It's going to reduce your damage taken by 20%, and every time you get hit, one of your mirror images is going to dissipate. While not as amazing as Ice Cold, it is a really good defensive that we have. So let's look now at the utilities we have. First up is Polymorph. You can incapacitate someone and turn them into a sheep or other animal, depending on what you've got in your spellbook. We've got Arcane Intellect, of course, buffing the intellect of our entire party and ourself. Counterspell is our Kick or Interrupt, as it's otherwise known. And then we have Blink. This is our speed buff that we have as a mage, and it's just going to teleport you forward, which is really useful. I must say I do prefer speed buffs myself where it just speeds you up, because with Blink you can accidentally blink into something bad rather than good, but overall it's a really great ability. And like I said before regarding the talents, these aren't obviously all our utilities etc that we have, and I would advise you to go through the spellbook and look at every single spell spell once you're more familiar with the spec, but for the reasons of being beginner guides here and not having information overload, I just wanted to show you some of the really important and cool ones that we have at our disposal. But now let's get into the exciting bit, which is going to be the rotation itself. We're going to start off looking at the UI, then move into single target raid damage, and then look at the changes we're going to make for Mythic Plus and AoE. So now that we're in game, I just want to divert your eyes to the center of my screen first before we get into anything else. You're going to see that there's a weak aura in the middle of the screen. If you don't know what a weak aura is, this is an add-on that does cool stuff like this. And it's going to visually enhance the way that we see a lot of our cooldowns and buffs, etc. This is exceptionally important for Fire Mage because of a buff called Blessing of the Sun King. Unless you have another way of tracking your buffs, personally, I think this is the best way to do it. If you need any help at all installing something like this, or if you have any class questions, literally anything at all with World of Warcraft, please do consider joining my Discord, where I will personally greet you and help you with anything at all. Honestly, it's never too much trouble. If you want to go one step further, you can also press the join button below and become a member, which actually helps support me, meaning I can get out more of these videos for you. And it does also unlock a secret channel in Discord where I can give you one-to-one help and you can just copy my UI with one click, etc. But yes, you don't necessarily need this weak aura, but it is going to be really, really helpful. So don't worry if you don't want it. I'm just letting you know it is there and it can help. So like I said before, we're going to start off with the raid single target rotation, and I'm going to show some of the core abilities we have. First up, looking at my action bar, we've got number 1, Fireball. This is going to cast a fireball. Each time it fails to critically strike a target, it's going to gain a stacking 10% increased crit chance, and that effect ends when it finally crits. Like I said, a lot of our rotation is around critting. Then we have Fire Blast. We have 3 charges of this, and it's instant. You can actually cast it while you're also casting other spells. So while your cast bar is going up, you can actually do some instant fire blasts as well. And this is always going to do a critical strike, okay? Then we've got Pyroblast. This is a super duper fireball, and this is going to do enhanced damage when your target is above 70% health and below 30. That's due to one of the talents I've taken, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Then we've got Phoenix Flames. It's going to hurl a phoenix doing fire damage and reduce damage to other nearby targets. It's also a critical strike, just like our Fire Blast is. This one has 2 charges rather than 3. And lastly, we've got Scorch. This is actually going to increase your movement speed a bit when it crits, and it's castable while moving. We're mostly going to be using this when the enemy is also below 30% health. More on that in a bit. Then, of course, we've got our Combustion, which is our big cooldown. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail on this one now. It's engulfing you in flames for 12 seconds. It's on a 2-minute cooldown. It increases your spell crit chance by 100%, so guaranteed crits while we're in it. And it grants you mastery equal to 75% of your crit strike stat. It's also castable while casting other spells. When you activate this cooldown, you're going to gain 6% crit, and other allies will also gain some crit as well. If that sounds confusing, don't worry. TLDR, we want to use this on cooldown, and there's going to be some other ways we can get into combustion as well. And let's look into those now. So the next things I'm going to show you pretty much are the 3 passives that make up and round out the fire rotation itself. And understanding these is imperative for you to succeed as a Fire Mage. The first one is this one here, and that is Hot Streak. It actually comes in 2 parts. There's Heating Up and then Hot Streak, okay? If you look back at my weak aura, on the first part of it where I'm circling here, you can see that it's grayed out. This is the Heating Up icon. So let's have a look at what Hot Streak is. Getting 2 direct critical strikes in a row with your fire spells is going to make your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike. Remember, Pyroblast is number 3 on our action bar and is our super duper one. So when we get 2 crits in a row, it's going to make our Pyroblast instant cast and cause double the amount of normal Ignite damage. What is Ignite? That's our mastery. Don't worry too much about it, but I'm going to read off the tooltip for you. Your target is going to burn for an additional percentage of damage over a certain amount of seconds as direct damage caused by your Fireball, Fire Blast, and other spells. If this effect is reapplied, that's actually going to be added, the remaining damage will be added to the new Ignite. And it has a 5% chance to reduce the cooldown of Fire Blast by a second. Fire Blast also causes your Ignite to spread to other nearby enemies. So as you can see, it basically just does its own thing, and we're going to be having that when we're just doing our normal rotation. So just to recap that again, Hot Streak is going to start when we get one critical strike, we're going to get Heating Up. When we get another critical strike after it, we're then going to get Hot Streak, which is going to make our Pyroblast instant and do more damage from our Ignite Mastery. The last passive I want to talk about is Sun King's Blessing. After you've consumed 8 Hot Streaks, so after your 8th instant Pyroblast, your next non-instant, so your non-Hot Streak Pyroblast, or Flame Strike. The reason I'm not talking about Flame Strike, that's our AoE, we'll talk about that later. Cast within 30 seconds, grants your Combustion, our big cooldown, for 6 seconds and deals a ton more damage, okay? So let's round that off, and what are we actually talking about? Every time we get a crit, we're going to get Heating Up. When we then get another crit, it will go boom, Hot Streak, and then we're going to get an instant Pyroblast. And then once we've had 8 of those, we're then going to do a non-instant Pyroblast that will then do a ton more damage. It's as simple as that. So let's see then how it all comes together for the rotation. First of all, we're going to be using our Combustion on cooldown. Remember, this is going to give us a 100% crit chance. Now, as with a lot of specs, we don't want to cap out on charges on our spells, so we're going to use Phoenix Flames at number 4 on my action bar when we are about to cap on charges of it. And we have 2 of these, remember, 2 charges of Phoenix Flames. If we look at the talent, you'll see that Phoenix Flames always crits. It's always going to be a critical strike, meaning we're always going to get a Heating Up and Hot Streak from Phoenix Flames. So if we use it, you can see I've gotten a crit and I have the Heating Up icon on my weak aura. If we use it again, you can see we've got a Hot Streak and now our Pyroblast is instant. Fantastic. So that's our top priority there. The next priority when Phoenix Flames is on cooldown is to use our Fire Blast. Remember, we have 3 charges of this. This is also always going to crit, and therefore we get a Heating Up and then a Hot Streak, meaning we can use an instant Pyroblast. We now have 2, which I'm circling here, Sun King's Blessings. Remember, 8 of these, we're going to use a non-instant Pyroblast. So again, we can use our Fire Blasts and get a Hot Streak, boom, instant Pyroblast. We've got a Phoenix Flames and then a Fire Blast, instant Pyroblast, and then etc, until you end up getting 8 Sun King's Blessings. When they're all on cooldown, your Phoenix Flames and Fire Blast, we're then going to move on to Fireball and hope to get a critical strike with that. But, you know, often we don't, and that's that. So you can see we've got 7 stacks of Sun King's Blessing. I'm going to use my 8th one, and it's turned into this buff here for 30 seconds. And that is the Fury of Sun King's Blessing. And then that's when we're going to use our non-instant Pyroblast, which is going to be even more super duper. So just to recap on the rotation there, we're going to use our Phoenix Flames, which is guaranteed to crit, to get Heating Up, and then Hot Streak, use our Pyroblast instantly. We're going to use then our Fire Blast to get the same again and use those, ramping up our Sun King's Blessings up to 8 stacks, and then we're going to use a non-instant Pyroblast. Now, when our Phoenix Flames and Fire Blast are both on cooldown, we can use this at number 7, Shifting Power. This is just going to reduce the cooldowns of our abilities a bit, and therefore help get those back up and running. So we can use that on the interim when we need to, when both Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames are on cooldown. If our Shifting Power, Phoenix Flames, and Fire Blast are all on cooldown, what do we then use? Like I said, it's going to be Fireball, and we're going to just keep using it until we get a crit, and then get Heating Up from it, and therefore a Hot Streak to use our instant Pyroblast. Then, when the target gets to below 30% health, we then swap out our Fireball for Scorch. You can see here in our talents, we have Searing Touch. Scorch deals 175% increased damage and is a guaranteed crit when the target is below 30% health. And that is why we use it at below 30% health. You can also see we've got improved Scorch talent, increasing the damage taken from us by 4% for 12 seconds when they're at below 30% health, up to 3 times. And additionally, Scorch crits are going to increase your movement speed. So Scorch is really, really fantastic below 30% health. Above 30% health, use Fireball. A few other talents I want to discuss with you. The number 1, of course, is the Sun King's Blessing at the bottom here, which is what we've discussed. Then we have Controlled Destruction here. Pyroblast damage is increased by 4% when the target is above 70 and below 30. Some people don't take this talent, And I take Flame Ascendant here instead, where if you've not cast Fireball for 8 seconds, your next one will increase the damage by 70% with 20% reduced cast time. I think for beginners that this one is better because you don't really have to do anything. And then again, we're taking Alexstrasza's Fury here, where Phoenix Flames and Dragon Breath always crit, and Dragon's Breath contributes to Hot Streak. Again, that is what makes our Phoenix Flames always crit. Otherwise, you may take the Firestarter one, where your Fireball and Pyroblast always do crits above 90%, but that's going to change how we use our combustion. TLDR, I think it's better quality of life, and it's just easier for beginners to take Alexstrasza's Fury and Controlled Destruction. You may notice down here on the talent tree, we're taking Living Bomb and Convection. If you're thinking, why aren't we using those then? We're only using it to get the Fireball down here, which damaging an enemy with 15 Fireballs or Pyroblasts cause your next Fireball or Pyroblast to call down a Meteor. Again, that's passive and quality of life, and it's fantastic. And that's why we're going down that side of the tree. Let's just recap on the rotation then in full one more time before we then switch over to look at the multi-target version. So we're going to be using our Phoenix Flames with instant crits to get heating up, and then Hot Streak, and then instantly use our Pyroblast. We're then going to use our Fire Blast to do the same thing, ramping up with these, and then when we run out of these, we're going to swap over to Fireball, but we can use our Shifting Power to help get them back off cooldown quicker. Once we reach 8 stacks of the Fire King's or Sun King's Blessing, we're then going to use we haven't got it here, but I'm showing you in case, we're going to use a non-instant Pyroblast to do even crazier damage. We're also going to use our Combustion on cooldown to give us 100% guaranteed crit and just make that rotation go even faster. And that is pretty much it. Oh yes, and using below 30% health, we swap from Fireball to Scorch. And that's pretty much it for the rotation single target. Now let's look at multi-target. This is the talent tree that we're going to be using for our AoE or more Mythic Plus style build, and let's look at the core changes we've done here. First of all, we've got these 3 talents on the right. Fuel the Fire. Flame Strike, which is our main AoE spell. TLDR, we're going to swap out Pyroblast for Flame Strike when doing AoE on enemies. Flame Strike has a chance equal to 100% of your spell critical strike to build up a hot streak. Woohoo! Then we've got Flame Patch. Flame Strike leaves behind a patch of flames that burn enemies within it. Over 8 seconds, deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. And then Incendiary Eruptions. Enemies damaged by Flame Patch have a 5% chance to erupt into a Living Bomb. So, fantastic. Living Bomb is, they explode, etc. It's very, very self-explanatory. Another talent we're taking is Meteor. Calls down a Meteor which lands at a target location after 3 seconds, dealing a ton of damage to all enemies hit, and burns the ground, dealing fire over a certain amount of time to enemies in the area. Quite straightforward. When doing AoE, Meteor, which you can place, as you can see, is going to be one of the top priorities. It is amazing, looks so cool. Here it is, as we can see. And then our Flame Strike, which is at number 9 on my action bar, cool down a pillar of flame, burning all enemies within the area and reducing their movement speed by 20% for 8 seconds, leaves behind again a patch of flames. That's from our talents that burns enemies within it. So again, this is a placeable one, and this is our other AoE. It's a cast one, and there it is. It's like a big pillar of flame. So again, we are going to use that instead of Pyroblast when doing AoE. You can get really, really technical with the AoE multi-target rotation, but as this is a beginner guide and I want to keep things straightforward, then I'm just going to say instead of Pyroblast, just use your Flame Strike and Meteor and use this build and you'll be absolutely fine. One thing that I haven't spoken about is this season's tier set. The reason I haven't, which is here by the way, is because this is all going to be already wrapped up into the rotation and you don't really need to think about it, but there it is just in case you want to. And that is it. This is the beginner guide for patch 10.2.5 for Dragonflight. I really hope this was helpful. Again, if you have any questions at all, need help with add-ons, your UI, the class, any other class, etc., please do consider joining my Discord or joining as a member so I can help you out with anything that you do need in your WoW journey.